David came into the briefing room where his team had gathered. They were actively talking to themselves, asking questions to each other, trying to figure out something that may or may not be happening. David did his best to avoid drawing their attention, however Oscar noticed him. "David, care to tell me why I got half a dozen Lithrani ship hands loading crap onto my shuttle?" He said loud enough to get everyone to focus, his stealthy entry ruined. David straightened up and walked to the head of the table, all eyes watching him as he did, then spoke. "Yes, I do care. No, I don't want to, and yes, I am going to anyway. Now sit down, shut up and listen, Gavi. Family meeting," with a wave to activate the holo map. "Audio scrub active," Gavi chirped. "I have 3 new bits of news. I'll start with the most pressing." He flicked his wrist and allowed the unaltered information to fill the display. "There are signs of basic and simplistic terraforming efforts from the planet. And because of this, there is a strong possibility that survivors are present. Your mission is mostly the same. Go down, survey the area, and take some samples, but now you also need to make contact and offer intervention. There is a chance that they will attack you. You are to not engage in a firefight unless cornered. We don't know if they understand English, so this mission is now a galactic common-only mission." Everyone's eyes either grow wide or narrow, depending on what they considered important. "Also, science teams from the Anomalies and SciFi will be joining you. Normally, I would push against it, but if the survivors know about us, then having us show up with other aliens next to us, then they may think twice before shooting," David said in a clear and concise tone. "New team assignments are as follows: Alpha, Ground Team, and Rick. You guys are still the same. Bravo, Oscar. You guys will be in charge of the Anomalies team. Keep them safe. Samantha and Charlie, along with Daniela, are in charge of the Zandrafane team. Angela, you are going with Alpha team to act as on-site medical. We have an expedition debrief in 3 hours in the hangar." He rested his hands on the table. "Lastly, the Anomalies and Zandrafane do not know about the attack or the terraforming, and the groundwork for it to seem like a glitch has been laid down. You are to not disclose any hint that you know what has happened, finally," he said, as he carefully and purposely shifted his head to scan them all. "Samantha has been assigned as expedition leader, which is an effort to maintain control and order. You are to treat her as you would me when we are on an assignment. Remember your training and everything will be fine. Questions?" "What is our allowed load out?" asked a grunt from the back. "1 lethal sidearm, the rest must be non-lethal for those with training. Everyone else non-lethal sidearm only. MVS kits are to be Hazard Environment 3, and combat additions as needed." David answered and scanned the crowd. "Mission parameters for first contact," Maya adds a bit sheepishly. "If you see someone, you are to follow the Galactic Community Guidebook provided that they are not aggressive. If they are, then follow the Republic Standard Guidelines. We don't want to hurt them, but don't get hurt to avoid that," David tells her with a nod, a gentle reassurance on his face. "Is there a reason I am expedition lead?" Samantha asked. "The leader of the Zandrafane science team is a traditionalist. If we try to assign anyone else, she may disregard their orders," David answered before adding, "which is also why you are in charge of her safety. I read over her file on the way here. She isn't bad, just strong-headed. But I trust you to win her over. She likes strong women. Use it." "And the shuttles?" Oscar asked with a hand raised. "They are to stay close to their assigned teams for evac or transport," David responded, and watched for a bit as no one had any more questions. "Great, dismissed." As everyone got up to get going, David scanned the crowd and saw his targets. "Emma and Andrew," David said loud to get their attention and waved them over. "Please follow me. I am making both of you my switch for when I need to sleep, so you'll need to know where and how to use the expedition terminal in the command center." "Frag, that cuts into free time, right?" said Andrew, but got elbowed by Emmy. "Sure thing. We know that you don't have an actual second now that everyone but us is going down," Emmy said with a smile. "Thanks, Emmy," David said with a smile back at her. She was always a bit more thoughtful than the rest of the team. He then moved to lead the way. "And yes, Andrew, it would if I wasn't setting you guys up for 4.5 rather than the 8 I would need." As they reached the expedition command, it was less packed or panicked than yesterday. But the number of people in here still left a lot to be desired. David didn't waste time, though, and led them around the other stations to his. The station itself was little more than a desk with a built-in terminal, which had a lot of high-performance wires running out the back of it to allow the comms system to easily feed and send anything he needs to or wants to know. There was also the chair David had requested for himself, citing that he would be expected to be at the station for 12 of the ship's 20-hour day cycle. He didn't bother with decorations, but was thinking about getting a water heater and some tea bags to keep him from losing it. "Okay, this is the human one," David said as he turned it on and made sure everything he set up booted up right. "So I will be adding the overlays for the other two fire teams and those of our non-human friends. That way you'll be able to see what's up on a basic level." He pointed to where he had the vitals of Maya's team and Alpha team set up. However, as they weren't wearing their suits, the overlay showed them as flatlining, then pointed to the grouped window and flicked through its displays. "Over here you can see the shuttle's states for fuel, shields, and current occupancy. Lastly, down here is the running text feed for the expedition forces. The elements on the ground can use this to chat in real time if they are safe, so they don't block up the voice channels." He turned to look at them. They were both watching him intently. Emmy showed more enthusiasm than Andrew, but that's 'cause he didn't want to be there. "Okay, if you need to talk to someone, you just tap their name and the connection should set up. Also, you can tap the team name to connect to the whole team if it's a question to the group." He moved his hand and pointed at a red box at the bottom corner of the screen. "This is your holy shit button. If you press it, the AI will loudly and rudely wake me up to come and help. Please use your judgment before you press it," he said, and stood upright and looked over them both. "Your job is easy. You come in, sit down, keep an eye on things. If something seems funny, ask those on the ground. If something goes bad, call me directly. If shit hit the cosmic fan, press the button. Got it?" He holds them in his gaze until they both nod. "Great, sorry to do this, but Emmy, I'll need you here about 4 hours before your shift. And Andrew, I'll need you to switch her off, okay?" "Yep, easy," Emmy said before turning around and heading off. "Yeah, got it," Andrew said and looked at David for a second. "I'll be heading back to Cole." David gave him a nod and turned to walk out as well. David made his way to the hangar after taking a shower. His normal morning routine was interrupted, but he still needed to. When he arrived, the humans and Vil Anis were exchanging greetings, but Alaris and her team were still missing. Not that they were late, but David felt like this was odd, as they would want to be first here as a show of readiness. The humans were set up in their MVS, the basic layer did its job and cover most of them, and the extra kits they needed just gave them backpacks. Nothing too extreme, and made Hearth look comical with the disparity of his body to the backpack he had, but they were all present and accounted for. The Villanis looked a bit odd. Their suits were all yellow and had slightly oversized packs and chest rigs on, but the number of antennas made it look like something out of a miner's surveyor kit. Each had a drone that they were hovering on, not too big, looked a bit like a pizza pie pan, but had a bowl on the bottom with blinking lights. Just as he managed to get closer to J-Lock, who was standing on the slightly raised disc, the door from the equipment area opened and a team of Zandraphanes came out along with Alaris. As she walks over to him, her team came to a standstill in formation, but Alaris's face told a story of anger, something David knew was bad and meant she was needed elsewhere. "Hearth!" David snapped in the big man's direction before following Alaris over to the disc. Hearth, for his part, did organize everyone into a formation David thought was good, with Samantha's team sharing the middle with the Zandraphanes. Next to her was Maya's team to her right, followed by Hearth and his. On the other side, the Villanis hovered over the lift of the Zandraphanes, and Rick's team capped the end. The pilot stood a step further. As Alaris got to the disc, she reached out a hand to J-Lock and took a deep breath. He looked scared before he realized the same conclusion as David, and walked onto her hand. He slapped his tail on her fur a bit, in an attempt to reassure her as she raised him to her shoulder while she moves on to the raised area. David intently followed behind her, readying the projector. "Hello to you all, and congratulations are in order. We are the first and hopefully last expedition to a barren planet this vessel will take," Alaris said in a loud orator's voice, her skills leading showing in full. "I am Alaris Hincarno, pack leader of the Zandraphanes. I am joined by David Solomon, leader of the human contingent." She waved a hand to David before raising that same hand to her shoulder, and Jalok be extension, and Jalok Hig Adran Lois Aniknar III, leader of the Vil Anis collection. She eyed her team leader as she spoke before softening her gaze. We have, after a careful conversation, chosen the expedition leader. I would like to introduce Samantha Trainer of the human contingent. Caldane until you all return aboard safe and sound. She gestures to Samantha, and hand her the honor of debriefing you all on the parameters of your expedition. She steps out and watches Samantha walk up and extending her hand to Samantha. Samantha shakes Alaris's hand. The two women stood facing each other at eye level for a second, then they let go, and Alaris steps to the left, and Samantha takes the center. Thank you, Alaris Hincarno, for the honor of being a Caldine, Samantha says after clearing her throat. And hello, everyone. I am Samantha Trainer. For those of you who have graciously offered your assistance in our investigation, I want to thank you. I and my teams will do our best to support you as we go about the business of finding out what has happened here. An image of the planet forms behind her as she speaks. As you are all aware, the planet X5001C was listed as a garden world, however, between the drone's arrival in this system 10 years ago and our arrival yesterday, the planet became a Class 2 barren world. And we have been tasked with the important question of why. So here is the standard plan, however. Conditions may shift. She pointed to the planet as it zoomed into what looks a valley, but David knew it was the site of a city. A small one where there is a bit of terraforming activity. I have found a good valley to set up our base camp at. From there, we will survey as much as we can and analyze as much as we can. I plan to hold a nightly meeting to collaborate on data and see if we can find a potential lead on what happened. As you know, there aren't a lot of things that can destroy an ecosystem in 10 years. Last thing, if you see something, say something. I would rather be coming to see nothing than to get your body, she said in a clear voice. As for team assignments, Alpha Team is set to support the human science team. Your ride is Ricardo. Bravo. You are in charge of protecting our Vil Anis allies. You are flying in the whiskey business. Zandrafane Science Team. You lot are with my Charlie team. We are dropping in the Firebat. Finally, I would like to thank our pilots as they may have to fly us through some storms that are still happening on the surface. So if they say something, you listen. Now load up and let's go. As she says so, the pilots run over to their shuttles. The different teams slowly find their way to their shuttles with the direction of their human guards. David walked over to Alaris's left and brought his shoulder to hers, something the Jalok noticed and took. Are you okay? David asks Alaris. His voice is calm and steady. Janris and some of my sisters pushed to have the trail tomorrow morning, she says, and the Duchess listened. You have to fight Uyali tomorrow morning. David took hold of Alaris's arm and placed a bit of pressure. You should know something, he said as she turned to him. I hate your sisters.